Reconnection successful. We are back. Hold on a second. All right there. Sorry about those technical difficulties. We'll get right back on there. We are back. Let's do this real quick. Oops. Deep, deep, deep. Okay, so thanks for hanging. And there we go. Okay.
Woo!
We're back. And did we lose everyone?
Everyone's like,
oh no, that's not the. No, it's because the link is the old one.
What?
Because it ended that thing, so we need to go. So here.
Go to YouTube.
No, give me the password.
How do I find the password?
I'm sorry. Go to scroll down. Oh no, it says that's still the same. Oh, we got 4 viewers. Okay, we're back. Can someone type something in so that I know you're there? Sorry, we had some technical difficulties. There's a little bit of a delay, so. Boop doop doop boop. This is a Palo Verde. There's 5 people on. Somebody message us. And just let us know if you're seeing us. We had a little bit of a disconnect there. Anyway, Babadop. Just want to make sure that some people get back on here. And also, I'm waiting for someone to message us so we know that you are see us.
Aha.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyway, so Palo Verde, we did that. Now we're going to go to Globe Mallow. Globe Mallow is a really cool perennial, and
I hope everyone finds it.
I hope there was a bunch of people who aren't on yet, so I'm going to take my time with this so they can get back on. Sorry, we had a technical difficulty. But anyway, the Globe Mallow is another wonderful plant, a very important bee plant. Native bees particularly love this plant. In fact, if you go out to, actually a lot of Malvaceae, this is the mallow family, but this one is particularly prevalent in our area, and it's usually orange. These are every once in a while you get a different color, and that's usually the ones that we sell is the other colors, but they're all really good nectar plants. And if you go out in the morning and look at your mallows, you'll often see native bees sleeping in the flowers, which is like the cutest thing in the world. So anyway, it's just a really good plant. It's active during the cool season too. They sort of go dormant in the summertime. Sometimes they'll stay green if you're watering it, but they'll still look kind of rough. It's good to just whack them back and let them grow back. But they'll reseed readily too. And if you have some of these other colors too, you will have when it reseeds, it'll reseed as the other colors less than orange. Although I'm fine with the orange one too myself, even though it's common. It's a really good wildlife plant, particularly bees. Butterflies like it too. It's a really good tortoise food, and it is a larval food plant as well. So it's a great plant. Aloysia gratissima, BEEBRUSH. This is a big shrub, semi-deciduous to fully deciduous. This plant, as we talked about, the goldfinches eat the seeds, but the flowers, they smell incredibly sweet. If you're doing a fragrant garden, this is one to put into your garden, and it's just it'll be dancing with little butterflies. And I've noticed like the little guys, like the skippers and blues and the hair streaks really particularly love this plant. Dahlias, there's so many of them, and they can be ground covers, they can be shrubs, but they're really good nectar plants, and they're really good larval food plants too. Offhand, what's that little yellow butterfly, the Mexican yellow? Well, Mexican yellow is one of them, but that's not the one I was thinking of. Anyway, there's a lot of butterflies that use this as a larval food plant, and most of the time you won't even notice because the butterflies that use this plant as a larval food plant are kind of small, or at least as larvae they're small. So even when they're eating the plants, you don't really notice them, but you do notice the butterflies all over them, and of course the adults are using the nectar. They also, whether it's the ground cover dahlia or the shrubby one, they tend to hold debris under the plant too, which is really good for soil and for just insect development in the soil. So I love dahlias. They're really good wildlife plants, and some of them are spring bloomers, some of them are fall bloomers, some of them kind of bloom off and on year round. So you can get a lot of you can cross some of those dead seasons where there's nothing blooming with dahlias.
Collect them all.
Collect them all. Penstemons. Obviously, this is really loved by the hummingbirds, and there's so many of them, and many of them are heavy reseeders, particularly the Perry's penstemon, which is that bright pink one. That's the most common one. It doesn't live as long as the other ones do, although it can live longer. It's not an annual, but they can act like annuals when they don't get enough resources. So they will, if they don't get enough water, they'll act like an annual. But if they do get water, they'll be more perennial. But the reason they don't live as long is they bloom all at once, and then they're done. So it's a spectacular bloom, and I highly recommend planting Perry's penstemon. But the other penstemons are more sober bloomers, and it's still spectacular looking plants, but they don't have those giant sprays where you can't even see the leaves, like Perry's penstemon is pretty spectacular in that way. But Eaton-eye is the one in the middle. That's a really nice long season blooming one. And then on top right there is another favorite, the rock penstemon, which it grows almost more shrubby. And that one, much like the Eaton-eye, they both have really long blooming seasons. They can bloom in spring, in the fall, and in the wintertime sometimes, particularly the rock penstemon. So those are good to have in there and mix in with the other penstemons. And there's many, 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 many penstemons, so you can play around with them. Even native penstemons, there's many species, if you were just sticking to only Arizona.
Collect them all.
But collect them all. And most penstemons do reseed pretty well. Desert willow is such a wonderful plant. Oh, I love this plant. I love the way it smells. It's got really interesting specialized pollinators with certain bees. I think some moths use it too. It's a larval food plant for moths for sure. It is deciduous. One thing that people don't think about is, Manduca rustica is a giant moth. It's a really beautiful moth. Uses this as a larval food plant. Plant grows right back, of course, like everything else. But one of the things that people don't think about is when you get a shrub full of caterpillars like that, and they're eating those leaves and they're pooping so much, you're getting free fertilizer too. A lot of people don't think about that, but like caterpillar, they call it frass. Caterpillar frass can really build up if you get quite a bit of insects, and that's fertilizer, and it's wonderful stuff. Desert willow is a really good plant also for seed-eating birds. We call them granivorous birds. It has kind of a fuzzy seed that comes out of those long pods, and seed-eating birds will use those seeds as food. And it's a really good tortoise plant. The flowers are almost like
chocolate.
It's like cocaine to tortoises.
Or cocaine. The other C word.
Yeah, or chocolate. You don't even like chocolate.
I don't, but I hear it's great.
I love chocolate. Isn't this a good relationship? For me, I get all the chocolate. Anyway, the tortoises really do love the desert willow, and it's a wonderful plant.
Do you know what the
blue flower penstemon is? I think that one is it's the one that we have, or we had. I don't know if we still have them.
Oh, strictus.
Strictus, yeah, strictus. Penstemon strictus. We do have another blue flowered one right now that is new for me. I can't remember. It starts with
Comorensis.
Yeah, Comorensis. So we have a blue flowered one like that, purplish blue flowered one.
It's a lighter blue, I think.
Yeah.
More periwinkle.
Yeah.
Collect them all.
Collect them all. Bamboo muhly. This is the grass I threw in here. It's a good, if you want to try grasses, but you're not so certain about them. Bamboo muhly is kind of cool because it looks like a miniature bamboo. I like bamboo muhly a lot because, the tortoises will eat it. And also it's a good habitat plant. Like animals can hide under it. There's where the stems come up and then they arch and then they come back down. There's like a little donut space down there where critters can hang out. And our tortoise actually sleeps under the bamboo muhly right now. So we quite like that plant a lot. And of course, it has all the same benefits as many other grasses do. This is a bigger plant. Think of it as like a shrub, because it is like a shrub. Creosote bush is such a cool plant. So creosote bush is one thing I want to dispel right now, because you'll see this in some of the I had to correct KVOA. They did an article on creosote. I think it was KVOA or one of those news stations did an article on creosote bush, and they were so wrong about a lot of things, but one of the things they said is creosote bush keeps things from growing underneath it. That is not true. It is true in some places. If you go out into the Mojave Desert or just west of here where it's like real desert, real dry desert, and there's nothing but creosote bush growing, it's so dry and there's so little rainfall that the resins from the creosote bush will outcompete other plants in those situations. But in our Sonoran desert, it's the opposite. Creosote bush is actually a nurse plant for a lot of species. A lot of trees and cacti start off underneath the creosote bush and are protected by it when they're little, and they grow up and out of the creosote bush. So first of all, let's just dispel that myth about creosote bush. It has so many cool. It's not a larval food plant that I know of for anything, but it has all kinds of weird, very specialized insects in it. There is a stick bug. So you guys know stick bugs. There's one particular stick bug that lives specifically on creosote bush, and the cool thing is when it's little, it's green and it looks like the fresh growth on a creosote bush. And then when that stick bug gets bigger, it turns brown and it looks like the older stems on a creosote bush. And it's even segmented like creosote bush is segmented. It's so cool. The creosote bush attracts a lot. It's a really important nectar plant. It's very nectar rich and it's always buzzing with all kinds of different bees. And I think that's actually what the stick bugs might be going after, and that might be what they eat. Stick bugs are really weird, by the way. They can change sex, and there's mostly, they're almost all female, and there's very rarely there's a male, and they have a very weird life history, and I should have looked it up before this class, but it's look it up. It's pretty cool. Actually, there's a site called Arizonensis. Spelled like it sounds. Look that up and put that in the comments. Arizonensis.com, but type in Arizonensis, Arizona Nensis, and then type in creosote, and then walking stick. And then post that article that comes up. Anyway, cool plant. There's a lot of other bugs too, but there's a lot of very specific bugs that only live on creosote bush. So it's a really cool plant for wildlife, and of course it's a very important plant for here because it's one of the main characters in our Sonoran desert. Snapdragon vine in nature is usually found in riparian areas. It's a little vine. This isn't the kind of vine that you're going to grow to cover a fence, and it's probably best in a little bit of shade. It can grow in full sun, but not reflected heat. It really likes, kind of partial shade, like under a mesquite, on the edges of a mesquite. But really, really, really good nectar plant. It's what's the butterfly that's a larval food plant for? Like the buckeye or something like that. But tortoises also eat it. And they reseed like crazy. They'll come up everywhere like the penstemons do. So cute little viney plant. And, if you got a shrub that's kind of bony on the bottom or something, you plant some snapdragon vines underneath it and it'll sprawl up. Just a wonderful little sweet plant, but really good nectar plant. Good for hummingbirds. Prickly pear cactus. A lot of insects depend on prickly pears, particularly, of course, this tortoise who's having a grand old time. I love it when tortoises get murder face from eating prickly pear cactus. They'll have the red all over. It looks like they killed someone. Anyway, obviously tortoises love the prickly pear, but there's a lot of critters that do. Lots of really weirdo insects that some people look at as pests, and they can cause some discoloration on the plants or whatever. But we live in the desert, man. There's a lot of cool things that we should make room for, and prickly pears make a lot of themselves. So there's usually plenty to go around. There's lots of birds that use the fruit, and the flowers attract all kinds of bees. The prickly pears also are great habitat plants for little birds. They find solace in there because it's a cactus, right? So it's easy to hide in them. Palmer's agave, I put this in here because it's really important for bats, particularly this agave. Palmer's and Perry's agave, but particularly Palmer's, I think, is the better one. And they bloom at the end of their life. So that's something that, again, we need to change our perspective of, because humans tend to be selfish. They see their agave blooming and they think that's a bummer. But that's part of its life cycle. And there's a lot of wildlife that depends on that that life cycle. And bats are one of them. And so there's Bat Conservation International is a group, I think based out of Texas or something, but they come here all the time, and they're very much pushing the planting of Palmer's agave and Perry's agave to help the bats along, and just get more of them going to help them with their migration patterns. So the Palmer's agave blooms at a specific time when is it the lesser nose bat that uses it? I can't remember, but the particular species of bat, I think it's the lesser nose, comes through at that time and feeds on that nectar. So, tufted evening primrose, a larval food plant for many moths, also an evening primrose, which means that it is feeding insects in the evening. It's a moth-pollinated plant. It also reseeds like crazy, and this one really gets beautiful red foliage in the wintertime. When it gets cold out and you get those first few frosts, the leaves turn like reddish purple. Sometimes in June and July they can look kind of ragged, and then they come back again. But they are perennials. But they also reseed like crazy. They come up pretty readily. And again, goldfinches love the seeds, even on these smaller evening primroses. For more inspiration, I highly recommend visiting the gardens, but particularly in the case of wildlife gardening, I highly recommend the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum because they do a great job. And again, I've said this many times, but if you go to the Desert Museum and you don't think that place is pretty, you got to move away. You got to get out of here. You don't belong in Arizona. Most of us are going to see this pretty, and the reason I'm telling you to do this is because, not the go away part, but the part about going to the Desert Museum is you can get a lot of inspiration on how to use native plants, especially things like grasses, which you might not have a good idea about how to add into your landscape. Go to the Desert Museum and see what they've done. I can explain it to you all day, but if you see it physically, it's a better thing to do. And they've been doing this for decades and decades. So, again, particularly some of those harder to understand growth forms like grasses and annuals, and how do you use that stuff in the landscape? They do a great job, and so go there and do your homework. Tohono Chul too does a pretty good job with native plants as well. There's a lot of cool botanical gardens out there, but particularly for what we're talking about today, wildlife gardening, I think that that's why the Desert Museum does what it does. They're trying to make it's more than a zoo. It's like it's an
inspiration.
It's
a habitat.
It's kind of like a living herbarium.
Well, and it's nice too because they do have it broken down. Like when you visit the hummingbirds, you get to see all the hummingbird plants that you might want to plant, and then they've got the aviary, so you can see different types of grain providing plants and different flower
fruiting plants.
Yeah, and
then they also divide it by habitat too. So they'll have the Arizona uplands, and then they'll have the oak woodlands and they do grasslands. They have a really cool. Go and check out their grass area. And you know what? Grass season's coming up. And when I say grass season, grasses are going to start blooming soon. And they look really cool when they're doing that. They're a little bit allergenic, but
Allergies. Just kidding.
But I don't care. I'll be out in those grasslands sneezing my head off. I love it out there. But you can get a good idea of what to do with native grasses by looking at what they've done. And by the way, native grasses are not as allergenic as Bermuda grass and buffalo grass. Those very aggressive. It's the really aggressive grasses that pump out the pollen, and that makes sense, right? Because if it's aggressive in its recruitment and moving across landscapes all over where it's not native, it's probably pumps out a lot of pollen, right? So anyway, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but we're going to go to the question part. We lost a bunch of people. Some of you, a good amount of you, found your way back, but some of we lost a few people due to technical difficulties. But if you have any questions about any of the stuff that we've been talking about, let us know. You can text it at that number down at the bottom of the screen there, or you can message it in the chat panel over there on the side of the screen. And there's always a delay between recording and when people can respond. So that's why I'm continuing to talk to make sure that I'm not going to miss anyone's questions.
Someone asked what we were drinking tonight.
Tonight, it's just we're being cheap tonight, so it's just Sierra Nevada Pale Ale
from the local liquor store.
Yeah, we have a local drive-through.
Drive-through liquor stores, so amazing.
Yeah, just a cheap Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Yeah, we drink a variety of things.
How do I protect native seed sowing from quail? I live on 3.5 acres in rural Gila County.
How do I protect native seed sowing from quail? Oh, so if you're trying to, I assume what you're saying is that you plant some native seed for grasses or wildflowers or whatever, and the quail are eating them. And I've seen the various methods of trying to keep them out of those situations. At the various botanical gardens, they use a net and they stretch it across. I'm not big on those net things because birds get caught in those nets, particularly because they're going after the grass. you might use something a little more sturdy like chicken wire, but then you get snakes and lizards that sometimes get caught in that too. So that's kind of tricky. You can use things with movement, like those little windmill things that scare away birds. People have those like tinfoil swirly things, or whatever, windmill, the tinfoil pinwheels, yeah. Windmills. Oh no, yeah, pinwheels. Pinwheels, that's right. I hate that word. It sounds like pinworms. No one wants that. I'm not that much into biology. Yeah, so that's, and also you can take to eat. You can get a quail block and put it, further away from that area and attract them towards, attract them to an area with seed that they might prefer. So that's usually the method that we use to attract, to deal with that. So I've noticed that feeding birds is actually keeping them out of the things you don't want them in.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it attracts more problems.
Sorry, I missed Jane. I skipped your question. What is a good way to ID grasses? Do we have a good reference? Bring him.
Grasses are tough. There are some books out there. I could go run and grab. There's one for.
Oh yeah, Jim Coe's. No.
Oh, the Jim Coe's book is good. That's actually a good one because we actually sell that book. Yeah. Do you? Oh yeah. No, just look it up on our website because. Oh yeah, we're not open right now. Yeah. By the way, we're not open if you didn't notice that. But we have Katie's gonna post. There we go. A link to the book, and we're back open on Monday online, by the way, so you can buy it from us if you want. It's called Grassland Plant ID for Everyone, and it's not just grassland plants. It's actually a lot of perennials too, and a lot of these perennials are plants that we grow. There's actually some trees and shrubs and everything. It's basically the plants in the area that he lives in. Jim Coe lives out in Cochise County, Santa Cruz County in
out near Sonoida
area, south of Sonoida. So it's an ID plant. It's if you love to go to the wine tours out there, by the way, or hit the wineries out there.
Here, I'm not gonna post the Amazon link. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, we don't like Amazon. But
here is. You can listen to P.D. Mesquite too, and there's a picture of the book on KXCI's website.
There you go. So the link, the picture of the book is on that link, and it's also a P.D. Mesquite podcast about grasslands. Yeah, about grassland plants ID. There you go. So in addition to our answers about IDing grasses, it's
P.D. tell you.
P.D. will tell you as well. The trick about grasses is getting them when they're blooming. Now you can learn pretty easily all the plants that are used typically in the landscape because they're all pretty distinct. The bamboo muley looks like bamboo muley. The regal mist looks like regal mist. And then there's blue stem and deer grass. So most of those are pretty easy to learn because their shapes are very distinctive. When you start diving into grasses, it gets more challenging, and that's when you got to catch them when they're blooming, and learn how to identify them. Grasses are one of the biggest families out there, and it was something I avoided for a long time. When I first came here, I was all about cacti and succulents, and all the sexy plants, Jatropha's and Bursaras, and I still love all those plants. But I avoided the asters and the grasses, and guess what I love more than anything now is the grasses and asters. And I avoided them because there's so many of them. And as a completist, I really love to learn about all of them, and so that's why it was so frustrating, and still is for me, because I want to learn. I want to know all the asters, and I want to know all the grasses, and it's hard to learn them all. But so it's going to take time. But looking at them very closely helps. And go out to the grasslands. Go out to the San Rafael Valley. There's an area south of Sonoita. And you can just drive on these dirt roads, and there's some intact grassland out there that still is full of native grasses. Unfortunately, in a lot of our grasslands, the layman's lovegrass has taken over, as has a lot of other species. Layman's lovegrass has taken over in a way that no other grass. I mean, you think buffalo grass is a problem. Layman's lovegrass is the dominant species now throughout all of Santa Cruz and Cochise County. And it's kind of a bummer. But we just have to accept that it's here now. But if you can find these areas that haven't been disturbed as much, you'll see all kinds of really cool grasses. We should, I've done a class on grasses before, and I should probably maybe do that again, because we really love grasses, and we love getting other people excited about them. So the field guide, that book is really good. And then if you want to dive in deeper, there's other books too. There's the
grasses one.
Grasses of Southwestern United States by, type that in. His name's on the tip of my tongue. There is another book, and some of the taxonomy is outdated, so you have to go and update that's it right there.
This one.
Grasses of the Southwestern United States by Frank Gould. So that's a good one. That's what I use, and I've gone in and rewritten all the taxonomy. You don't have to do that. You can learn the old names. Who cares? But that's another thing you can do. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Looks like we did it. So next week is the love of weird plants. So we're gonna talk about cacti and succulents and just weirdos in general. It's just gonna be a fun class to talk about the various weirdo plants out there, and then fruit trees after that. And like I said, after those classes, the next two classes after that is by Carrie Ann and Neff. And they're going to talk about, the seasonal. One class is about in the food garden, and then another class is on pollinators, but more like profiles of pollinator plants. And Carrie Ann does a really great job on that. The method of signing up for that class is different. You do have to sign up, and you'll get a link and stuff. So you'll find all the information you need on our website for that. So,
and I think they're on Facebook as well, if you're on Facebook.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah.
Alrighty. Thanks for tuning in, and we are now signing off.